In Part 1, you learned to read anyone like open book. You discovered how to establish baseline and spot deviations, revealing emotional triggers. You mastered detecting micro-expressions, exposing hidden emotions. You learned reading body language clusters, creating reliable reads. You developed skills analyzing vocal patterns, understanding IQs, recognizing spatial behavior, identifying self-soothing, detecting incongruence, and analyzing response patterns. You can now see what others miss. You read people, but reading is only defense. Reading is only awareness. Now you need to understand offense. Now you need to understand influence. Because while you were learning to read people in Part 1, master manipulators have already read you. They identified your fears, your desires, your vulnerabilities, your psychological pressure points. They discovered exactly what makes you tick, what triggers your emotions, what bypasses your rational defenses. And now they use that information against you. This is Part 2 of Dark Psychology Trilogy, revealing 10 dark persuasion tactics master manipulators use once they have read you. These patterns bypass conscious rational thinking, creating unconscious automatic compliance. They make you say yes when you meant to say no. They make you do things you never consciously chose. They control your behavior, your decisions, your emotions, without you ever realizing you are being manipulated. These tactics are based on evolutionary psychology, exploiting hardwired human responses that exist below conscious awareness. They work on everyone, including you, regardless of intelligence, education, or awareness, because they target automatic psychological mechanisms, not rational thought. Master manipulators use all 10 tactics simultaneously, creating influence so subtle, so psychologically sophisticated, that you never see it coming. By the time you realize you have been manipulated, the decision is already made, the action already taken, the control already established. Part 2 teaches you exactly how they do it. You will learn the 10 core influence patterns. You will understand the psychological mechanisms they exploit. You will recognize when these tactics are being used on you. And in Part 3, you will learn complete protection plus ethical application. This trilogy transforms you from blind target to aware defender to ethical influencer. Part 1 taught reading. Part 2 teaches influence tactics. Part 3 teaches protection and ethics. Let's begin Part 2. The 10 dark persuasion tactics master manipulators use once they have read you. Chapter 1. Reciprocity exploitation. Creating forced obligation through strategic giving. Chapter 1 exploits reciprocity, creating forced obligation through strategic giving, using fundamental human tendency to feel compelled to return favors even when initial gift was unsolicited, unwanted, or trivial. The reciprocity power shows that psychologist Robert Cialdini identified reciprocity as one of 6 universal influence principles, where receiving anything from another person creates immediate psychological pressure to reciprocate, because humans are hardwired through evolution to return favors, maintaining social bonds, and avoiding being perceived as takers. That reciprocity obligation is so powerful it can create compliance, even when gift recipient did not want gift, never asked for it, and does not even like gift giver, demonstrating that obligation operates independent of desire or relationship. That manipulators exploit reciprocity by giving strategically, not generously, where every gift is calculated investment designed to extract disproportionate return, making receiver feel they owe far more than gift was worth. The timing of reciprocity request matters enormously, where asking for return immediately after giving maximizes obligation, while delayed requests allow guilt to build, creating even stronger pressure. And understanding that systematically exploiting reciprocity through strategic giving, personalization, timing, and guilt leverage is essential. First, dark persuasion framework, because reciprocity bypasses rational cost-benefit analysis, creating emotional obligation that compels compliance, making this primary manipulation tool, where recognizing reciprocity exploitation enables resistance to manufactured debt. Reciprocity exploitation creates forced obligation through strategic giving. Give small, get big. Recognize reciprocity or feel manipulated debt. This strategic giving calculation plans gifts designed to maximize sense of obligation relative to actual cost. Strategic giving includes giving first before asking for anything, establishing yourself as giver and creating debt. Giving unexpectedly when recipient is not prepared, making gift feel more significant than if anticipated. Giving things that cost you little but feel valuable to recipient, maximizing return on investment. Giving publicly when possible, creating social pressure to reciprocate visibly. And giving repeatedly, creating accumulated debt, where multiple small gifts build larger obligation. than single equivalent gift. Manipulators understand that gift value is perceived, not actual, where $20 gift that required effort or sacrifice feels more valuable than $50 gift that was easy, creating greater obligation despite lower objective cost. Strategic givers also understand reciprocity works even with unwanted gifts, because obligation stems from receiving, not from wanting, where studies show even gifts people explicitly did not request still create compliance pressure. The personalization tactics make gifts feel thoughtful and meaningful, multiplying sense of obligation. Personalization includes tailoring gift to recipient's stated interests or needs, making it seem you paid attention and care about them specifically. Adding personal notes or touches, creating emotional connection to gift. Presenting gift as though you went out of your way or made sacrifice, even if you did not. And framing gift as exclusive or special for them alone, making reciprocity feel more binding. Personalized gifts create stronger obligation than generic gifts because they suggest relationship and investment beyond transactional exchange, making recipient feel they owe personal return, not just material repayment. The timing optimization asks for reciprocation at moment when obligation feeling peaks, maximizing compliance probability. Optimal timing includes requesting return immediately after giving when obligation is strongest and before recipient has time to rationalize or weigh debt. Waiting until obligation builds through guilt, where delayed request can actually increase pressure as recipient becomes uncomfortable with unreciprocated gift. Requesting at moment of recipient vulnerability or need when they are most susceptible to influence. And creating deadline or urgency for reciprocation, preventing time for reflection. Timing also involves spacing multiple small gifts over time rather than single large gift, creating multiple obligation moments and preventing habituation to generosity. The guilt leverage applies pressure when reciprocation is resisted or delayed. Guilt tactics include reminding person explicitly or implicitly of gift and implied obligation, expressing disappointment or hurt that gift was not appreciated through reciprocation, comparing their lack of reciprocation to your generosity, highlighting imbalance, publicly mentioning gift, creating social shame about non-reciprocation, and withdrawing warmth or relationship, creating fear that failure to reciprocate will cost relationship. Guilt transforms gift from positive gesture to emotional burden, where only compliance can relieve discomfort. The disproportionate requests ask for returns far exceeding gift value. Disproportionate reciprocity includes requesting money, time, or favors worth significantly more than gift provided, asking for things recipient would normally refuse, but obligation makes them consider, using small gift as foot in door for much larger requests, and framing large request as fair reciprocation for small gift. Free sample tactics exemplify this, where tiny free sample creates pressure to purchase full product costing dramatically more than sample value. The rejection then retreat combines reciprocity with contrast, where making large request that gets rejected then retreating to smaller requests makes second request seem reasonable, and like concession requiring reciprocation. This door-in-face technique works because retreating from large to small request is itself gift requiring return, gift of compliance to smaller request. The continuous obligation creates ongoing debt cycle, where compliance to reciprocity request is followed by another gift, creating new obligation, preventing debt from ever being cleared. Manipulators maintain perpetual creditor position, ensuring ongoing leverage. The awareness recognition protects by identifying when gifts are strategic, not genuine. Recognition includes noticing when gift comes before any relationship, justifying generosity, questioning why someone is giving you something without obvious reason, evaluating whether gift feels manipulative or creates pressure, and refusing gifts from people whose motives are unclear. Awareness that reciprocity obligation is automatic, not rational, enables conscious decision about whether to accept gift and implied obligation. The implementation requires giving strategically to maximize obligation, personalizing gifts, multiplying emotional debt, timing requests for peak obligation, leveraging guilt when reciprocation resists, requesting disproportionate returns, using rejection then retreat, creating continuous obligation, and treating reciprocity exploitation as primary manipulation, where small gifts extract large compliance, making strategic giving essential. First arc persuasion framework, creating forced obligation that bypasses rational evaluation, compelling compliance through manufactured emotional debt. Reciprocity exploitation creates forced obligation through strategic giving. Give small, get big. Recognize reciprocity or feel manipulated debt. You understand now that receiving anything creates obligation pressure, that strategic giving maximizes debt feeling, that timing and personalization multiply obligation, that guilt leverages non-compliance. And the Chapter 1 provides reciprocity framework, making obligation exploitation possible where unaware recipients feel compelled to comply with disproportionate requests. Chapter 2 Social proof manipulation, manufacturing false consensus and popularity. Chapter 2 manipulates social proof, manufacturing false consensus and popularity, exploiting fundamental human tendency to look to others' behavior to determine correct action. The social proof power shows that psychologist Robert Cialdini identified social proof as powerful influence principle, where people determine what is correct by finding out what other people think is correct, especially in situations of uncertainty or ambiguity. That social proof operates through automatic assumption that if many people are doing something it must be right, creating herd behavior and bandwagon effects where individuals abandon independent judgment to follow crowd. That manipulators exploit social proof by creating false appearance of popularity, consensus, or widespread adoption, making target believe everyone else has already chosen this option. That social proof is particularly powerful when observers perceive other people as similar to themselves, where seeing peers engage in behavior creates stronger influence than seeing dissimilar others, and understanding that systematically manipulating social proof through manufacturing testimonials, creating crowd behavior, leveraging authority endorsements, and artificial scarcity is essential. Second, dark persuasion framework, because social proof bypasses individual critical thinking, substituting crowd wisdom for personal evaluation, making this primary conformity tool where recognizing manufactured social proof enables resistance to false consensus pressure. Social proof manipulation manufactures false consensus, creating pressure to conform. Show everyone does it trigger following. Spot fake proof or fall for manufactured popularity. The testimonial manufacturing creates appearance of satisfied customers' widespread approval or successful outcomes. Testimonial tactics include fabricating positive reviews and ratings, creating illusion of universal satisfaction, cherry-picking only positive feedback while hiding negative responses, skewing perception, using vague testimonials that sound good but provide no verifiable details, preventing validation, posting fake before and after results or success stories that never actually occurred, buying reviews or paying for positive testimonials, creating purchase consensus, using stock photos or actors, pretending to be real customers, and timing release of testimonials to create surge of apparent approval. Manufactured testimonials work because most people assume reviews are genuine, taking them at face value without verification, particularly when volume of positive reviews seems overwhelming, making skepticism feel paranoid. The crowd behavior exploitation creates bandwagon effects where seeing others engage in behavior triggers automatic following. Crowd tactics include showing long lines or waiting lists suggesting high demand and desirability where people assume anything many others want must be valuable, displaying crowded venues or sold-out events, creating perception of popularity. Using audience plants or shills who engage in desired behavior, triggering observers to imitate like applause or laughter at shows, creating viral content or trending topics through artificial boosting, making something appear more popular than actual organic interest, showing statistics or numbers of users, adopters, or buyers, creating impression of widespread adoption, and leveraging FOMO, fear of missing out, by emphasizing how many others are already participating. Crowd behavior works through assumption that large numbers cannot all be wrong, making individual feel joining crowd is safe rational choice while resisting makes them outlier. The authority endorsement transfers credibility from respected figures to product or idea. Authority endorsement includes using celebrity spokespeople whose fame transfers to endorsed product, creating perceived quality through association. Citing expert testimonials from doctors, scientists, or specialists, lending credibility. Displaying awards, credentials, or certifications, creating official approval appearance. Showing media coverage or press mentions, suggesting journalistic validation. Using influencer marketing where trusted online personalities recommend, creating parasocial trust. Transfer and name-dropping impressive clients or users, creating credibility through association. Authority endorsement works because people shortcut evaluation by assuming if respected authority approves it must be good without personally verifying quality or suitability. The artificial scarcity claims create urgency through suggesting high demand. Scarcity tactics include stating limited availability or low inventory, creating rush to acquire before depletion. Showing real-time counters of purchases or sign-ups, creating perception of active demand. claiming exclusive access on membership, creating desirability through selectivity, emphasizing waitlists or application processes suggesting not everyone can access, and combining scarcity with social proof through messages like only 3 items left and 20 people viewing, suggesting competition for scarce resource. Artificial scarcity leverages social proof because implied high demand from others makes items seem valuable and creates pressure to secure it before others take remaining supply. The similarity emphasis increases social proof power by highlighting that similar others have chosen this option. Similarity tactics include sharing testimonials or examples from people matching target demographic, emphasizing that people like you are choosing this, creating identity-based conformity. Using regional or local social proof showing neighbors or community members participating, and targeting specific groups with customized social proof relevant to their identity. Similarity works because seeing similar others engaging behavior creates stronger identification and modeling than seeing dissimilar others. The quantity over quality presents volume of social proof rather than depth, creating appearance of overwhelming consensus. Quantity tactics include displaying large numbers of reviews even if average rating is mediocre, showing millions of users or downloads regardless of actual engagement or satisfaction, and emphasizing breadth of adoption rather than quality of outcomes. Sheer volume overwhelms critical evaluation, making targets assume such widespread adoption must indicate value. The cascade creation seeds initial adoption, knowing that social proof will create self-perpetuating growth. Cascade tactics include paying early adopters or giving free products to influential users who will publicly display usage, triggering followers, creating artificial initial surge through bots or paid participants, establishing momentum, and strategically placing product in high visibility contexts where observers will see apparent popularity. Initial artificial social proof becomes real as genuine users join, assuming popularity is organic. The awareness recognition protects by questioning whether consensus is real or manufactured. Recognition includes verifying testimonials through independent sources not provided by seller, looking for suspiciously uniform positive reviews suggesting fabrication, checking whether social proof claims can be validated through objective data, being skeptical of vague testimonials without specific verifiable details, recognizing that popularity does not equal quality or suitability for your needs, and understanding that manufactured consensus is common, making skepticism rational. Awareness that social proof can be faked enables independent evaluation rather than automatic following. The implementation requires manufacturing testimonials and reviews, creating false consensus, exploiting crowd behavior, triggering bandwagon effects, leveraging authority endorsements, transferring credibility, creating artificial scarcity, suggesting high demand, emphasizing similarity to target, increasing identification, prioritizing quantity over quality, overwhelming evaluation, seeding cascades, creating self-perpetuating growth, and treating social proof manipulation as conformity tool where manufactured popularity bypasses critical thinking, compelling compliance through false consensus, making consensus manufacturing essential. Second, dark persuasion framework, exploiting human tendency to follow perceived crowd. Social proof manipulation manufactures false consensus, creating pressure to conform. Show everyone, does it trigger following. Spot fake proof or fall for manufactured popularity. You understand now that people look to others to determine correct action, that testimonials and crowds can be manufactured, that authority endorsement transfers credibility, that artificial scarcity suggests demand, and that Chapter 2 provides social proof framework, making false consensus creation possible, where unaware targets follow manufactured popularity. Chapter 3. Authority positioning, establishing instant credibility and unquestioned compliance. Chapter 3 positions authority, establishing instant credibility and unquestioned compliance, exploiting automatic human deference to perceived authority figures. The authority power shows that Stanley Milgram's famous experiments demonstrated people obey authority even against personal moral judgment, where subjects administered what they believed were dangerous electric shocks to innocent people simply because authority figure instructed them to, revealing disturbing extent of authority compliance. That authority triggers automatic compliance without rational evaluation, where people assume authority figures know better, possess superior knowledge, or have legitimate right to direct behavior, making obedience feel appropriate and safe. That manipulators establish false authority through symbols, credentials, and communication style, creating perception of expertise, status, or power. that does not actually exist. That authority compliance operates across contexts from medical settings, where patients follow doctor recommendations without question, to sales, where expert positioning creates trust and purchase decisions, and understanding that systematically. Positioning authority through symbol, display, confident communication, citation of sources, information asymmetry, and institutional leverage is essential third persuasion framework because authority bypasses critical evaluation, creating automatic deference, making this primary credibility tool where recognizing false authority enables resistance to unearned compliance. Authority positioning establishes instant credibility, creating automatic compliance. Display authority symbols trigger deference. Recognize false authority or obey blindly. The symbol display uses visual and contextual cues signaling authority status. Authority symbols include professional titles like doctor, professor, or expert, creating immediate credibility assumption. Credentials and certifications, whether legitimate or exaggerated, displaying diplomas, licenses, or awards. Uniforms or professional attire, where white coats, business suits, or official clothing trigger authority recognition. Physical props, including impressive office settings, luxury items, or technology, suggesting success and expertise. And name-dropping affiliations with prestigious institutions, companies, or individuals transferring their authority. Symbols work through automatic cognitive shortcuts where people process surface indicators of authority without verifying actual expertise or legitimacy, creating compliance based on appearance rather than substance. Milgram experiments showed that simple white lab coat was sufficient to establish authority, resulting in dangerous obedience, revealing power of superficial symbols. The confident communication projects certainty and decisiveness, creating perception of knowledge and control. Confident communication includes speaking with definitive language, avoiding qualifiers, or hedging, creating impression of absolute knowledge. Using technical jargon or specialized vocabulary, suggesting expert-level understanding while potentially confusing target. Maintaining strong vocal tonality and steady pace, projecting self-assurance. Displaying decisive body language, including direct eye contact, upright posture, and purposeful gestures, and expressing opinions as facts rather than possibilities, eliminating appearance of doubt. Confidence works because uncertainty makes people seek guidance from those who appear certain, where projected confidence suggests person possesses knowledge others lack, making their directions feel trustworthy. False confidence is indistinguishable from genuine expertise, for untrained observers, making confident delivery effective regardless of actual knowledge. The source citation references external experts' data or research, creating appearance of informed evidence-based position. Citation tactics include referencing scientific studies or statistics, lending credibility through association with research even if studies are misrepresented or don't actually support claim. Name-dropping respected experts or authorities, suggesting alignment with established knowledge. Using academic or technical language, creating scholarly impression. Displaying charts, graphs, or data visualizations, suggesting rigorous analysis, even if data is cherry-picked or misleading. And citing sources that sound authoritative but are difficult to verify, preventing fact-checking. Citation works through authority transfer, where mentioning respected sources makes speaker seem credible by association, even when speaker misunderstands or misrepresents those sources. The information asymmetry positions manipulator as sole or primary knowledge source, creating dependence. Asymmetry tactics include withholding information or providing selective disclosure, controlling what target knows. Using complexity or technical detail, overwhelming target's capacity to evaluate independently, claiming specialized insider knowledge not publicly available, creating exclusive information perception. Controlling access to verification sources, preventing independent fact-checking, and framing situation as too complex for lay understanding, requiring expert guidance. Information asymmetry works by making target feel they need authority figure to navigate complexity or access knowledge, creating dependence relationship where compliance follows from perceived necessity. The institutional leverage transfers trust from established institutions to individual. Institutional tactics include affiliating with respected organizations, universities, or companies, borrowing their credibility. Using institutional resources or platforms, suggesting official backing. Displaying institutional endorsements or partnerships, and wearing institutional uniforms or using institutional titles. Institutional authority works through assumption that organizations vet and validate their representatives, making individual trustworthy by association with trusted institution. The expertise demonstration displays knowledge through answering questions, providing detailed information, or solving problems. Demonstration tactics include offering free advice or consultation, showcasing expertise while creating reciprocity, accurately predicting outcomes, or explaining mechanisms, building credibility through demonstrated knowledge, and using case studies or examples, showing successful application of expertise. Genuine expertise demonstration builds legitimate authority, while false expertise can be simulated through superficial knowledge or rehearsed responses. The authority gradient maintains power differential through controlling interaction dynamics. Gradient tactics include positioning physically above target through elevated seating or standing, controlling conversation flow through directing topics and interrupting, using formal language or titles, maintaining status distinction, and limiting accessibility, creating scarcity of authority figure's time or attention. Gradient works by reinforcing perception that authority figure is superior, requiring deference. The challenge intolerance responds to questioning with dismissal or offense, protecting false authority from exposure. Intolerance tactics include expressing disappointment or disapproval when authority is questioned, creating social pressure to accept. Claiming questions demonstrate ignorance or inability to understand, and withdrawing cooperation or relationship when challenged. Intolerance works by making questioning feel socially risky, encouraging blind acceptance. The awareness recognition protects by evaluating actual expertise rather than symbols. Recognition includes verifying credentials and affiliations through independent sources, questioning whether confident communication reflects actual knowledge or performance, checking cited sources for accuracy and relevance, seeking second opinions, preventing dependence on single authority, being skeptical of complexity or jargon that prevents understanding, and recognizing that legitimate authority welcomes questions while false authority resists scrutiny. Awareness that authority symbols can be manufactured enables evaluation of substance, not just appearance. The implementation requires displaying authority symbols, creating credibility perception, using confident communication, projecting certainty, citing sources and experts, creating informed appearance, establishing information asymmetry, creating dependence, leveraging institutional affiliations, transferring trust, demonstrating expertise, building credibility, maintaining authority gradient, reinforcing deference, showing challenge intolerance, protecting false authority, and treating authority. Positioning as automatic compliance tool where symbols and confidence create deference, bypassing critical evaluation, making authority establishment an essential third of persuasion framework, exploiting human tendency to obey perceived expertise. Authority positioning establishes instant credibility, creating automatic compliance. Display authority symbols trigger deference. Recognize false authority or obey blindly. You understand now that people automatically defer to perceived authority, that symbols and confidence create credibility, that citation and complexity build expert perception, that information control creates dependence, and that Chapter 3 provides authority framework, making false credibility establishment possible where unaware targets comply with manufactured expertise. Chapter 4 Scarcity and urgency creation, triggering fear of missing out and rush decisions. Chapter 4 creates scarcity and urgency, triggering fear of missing out and rush decisions by exploiting loss aversion and FOMO, making opportunities appear limited in quantity or time, forcing immediate decisions that bypass rational evaluation. The scarcity power shows that behavioral economics research demonstrates humans feel losses approximately twice as intensely as equivalent gains, making potential loss of opportunity far more motivating than potential gain of same opportunity. That scarcity creates value where limited availability makes things seem more desirable regardless of objective quality, through psychological reactance, where threatened loss of freedom to obtain something increases desire for it, that urgency forces decisions by removing option to delay or gather more information, creating pressure to choose now or lose opportunity forever. That artificial scarcity and manufactured urgency are easy to create through simple claims about limited quantities or time constraints, making this manipulation accessible to any influencer. And understanding that systematically creating scarcity through quantity limits, time constraints, exclusive access, and loss framing is essential fourth dark persuasion framework. Because scarcity bypasses careful deliberation, triggering panic-driven compliance, where recognizing artificial scarcity enables calm evaluation rather than rash decision made from FOMO. Scarcity and urgency creation triggers fear of missing out, forcing rush decisions. Make it scarce, trigger panic. spot artificial scarcity, or make rushed choice. The quantity limitation claims that availability is restricted, creating competition and urgency. Quantity tactics include stating only few items left, whether true or fabricated, displaying real-time inventory counts that may be manipulated, showing number of people currently viewing item, creating competition pressure, claiming limited edition or exclusive production runs, using phrases like while supplies last or until sold out, and creating actual scarcity by limiting production, even when demand justifies more, to maintain scarcity perception. Quantity scarcity works because limited availability signals value where abundant things seem less desirable, while scarce things seem precious, making scarcity itself create perceived value independent of actual worth. Manipulators understand they can create scarcity artificially through restricting supply intentionally or claiming restrictions that do not exist, producing same psychological effect as genuine scarcity. The time-constrained creation establishes deadlines, forcing immediate decision or loss of opportunity. Time tactics include setting arbitrary deadlines like offer expires midnight tonight, using countdown timers showing seconds ticking away, creating visceral urgency, claiming limited time sales or promotions, creating window of availability, establishing enrollment or registration deadlines, sending last chance or final warning messages, and using flash sales or surprise limited time offers, preventing time for consideration. Time constraints work because deadlines eliminate option to delay and gather more information, forcing choice between acting now or accepting definite loss, making rash decision feel necessary even when deadline is entirely artificial with no real consequence for missing it, except manufactured one. The exclusive access framing makes opportunity seem available only to select few, creating status desire and FOMO. Exclusivity tactics include claiming invitation only or members only access, using application or qualification requirements, making acceptance seem selective, creating VIP or insider access tiers, limiting to first certain number of people who act, and emphasizing you have been specially selected, making target feel privileged. Exclusivity works because humans desire what others cannot have, making restricted access increase desirability while also triggering fear of missing exclusive opportunity, creating dual motivation of desire and loss aversion. The loss framing emphasizes what will be lost rather than what will be gained. Loss framing includes focusing on what you will miss rather than what you will get, highlighting costs of inaction rather than benefits of action, using negative consequence language like "do not lose this opportunity," comparing current state to potential loss if action not taken, and framing choice as preventing loss rather than achieving gain. Loss framing works because loss aversion makes potential losses feel more significant than equivalent gains, making avoid loss more motivating than achieve gain, even when outcome is identical, making loss-framed appeals dramatically more persuasive than gain-framed identical appeals. The disappearing offer creates urgency through removal of option entirely after deadline. Disappearing tactics include actually removing offers or products after deadline, maintaining threat credibility, hiding pricing or details after expiration, forcing future action to be based on memory not fresh evaluation, making expired offers unavailable at any price, not just higher price, and using one-time offer language claiming opportunity will never return. Disappearing offers work because they eliminate option to reconsider or return, making decision truly now or never, forcing immediate commitment or permanent loss. The comparison to previous availability highlights scarcity by contrasting with past abundance. Comparison tactics include mentioning that item used to be readily available, but now is scarce, showing historical pricing or availability, creating sense that current scarcity is anomaly, emphasizing increased demand or decreased supply, explaining scarcity, and projecting future greater scarcity, suggesting current moment is last chance before situation worsens. Comparison works because it provides reference point, making current scarcity feel more acute and temporary, suggesting acting now prevents future regret. The removed option to delay explicitly prohibits considering offer later. Removal tactics include stating you must decide now or lose opportunity, removing save or bookmark features, forcing immediate choice, using high-pressure sales tactics, refusing to allow thinking it over, and creating social pressure where hesitation seems weak or foolish. Remove delay works because it eliminates middle ground between immediate yes and permanent no, forcing binary choice that favors compliance. The manufactured competition suggests others are competing for same limited resource. Competition tactics include showing number of other people interested, displaying recent purchases by others, using bidding or auction formats, claiming high demand, and suggesting if you delay someone else will take opportunity. Competition works because humans are loss-averse and competitive, making threat of losing to others particularly motivating. The awareness recognition identifies artificial scarcity. Recognition includes questioning why scarcity exists and whether it is real or manufactured, investigating whether claimed limits are verifiable, asking whether deadline is arbitrary or meaningful, checking if offer truly disappears or returns later, and testing by waiting to see if scarcity claim was accurate. Awareness that scarcity is often artificial enables calm evaluation rather than panic response. The implementation requires creating quantity limitations claiming restricted availability, establishing time constraints forcing immediate decision, framing exclusive access, emphasizing loss over gain, using disappearing offers, comparing to previous abundance, removing delay option, manufacturing competition, and treating scarcity creation as triggering FOMO, where artificial limits create rash decisions bypassing rational evaluation, making urgency essential. Fourth, dark persuasion framework. Exploiting loss aversion through manufactured scarcity, whether real restrictions exist or not. Scarcity and urgency creation triggers fear of missing out, forcing rash decisions. Make it scarce, trigger panic. Spot artificial scarcity or make rash choice. You understand now that humans feel losses more intensely than gains, that scarcity creates value regardless of quality, that time constraints eliminate deliberation, that loss framing is more persuasive than gain framing, and that Chapter 4 provides scarcity framework, making urgency creation possible where unaware targets rush to avoid manufactured loss. Chapter 5. Liking and rapport weaponization, using friendship as manipulation tool. Chapter 5 weaponizes liking and rapport using friendship as manipulation tool by artificially creating likability and false intimacy, exploiting tendency to comply with requests from people we like, trust, or feel connected to. The liking power shows that Robert Cialdini identified liking as fundamental influence principle, where people are significantly more likely to say yes to requests from people they like regardless of request merit, making likability powerful compliance tool. That liking can be manufactured through specific techniques, including similarity, emphasis, flattery, and shared experiences, creating false sense of connection and friendship where none genuinely exists. That rapport weaponization is particularly insidious because it feels authentic, making targets lower guard and trust manipulator, believing relationship is real when actually it is calculated influence strategy. That once liking is established, it creates halo effect where positive feelings about person transfer to their ideas, requests, and products, making everything they offer seem more appealing, and understanding that systematically weaponizing liking through mirroring similarity, finding compliments, and false intimacy creation is essential. Fifth, dark persuasion framework, because manufactured friendship bypasses skepticism, creating compliance through emotional connection, where recognizing artificial rapport enables maintaining appropriate boundaries rather than trusting calculated likability. Liking and rapport weaponization uses friendship as manipulation tool. Make them like you, get compliance. Recognize artificial rapport or trust fake friend. The mirroring and matching technique copies target's behavior, creating unconscious sense of similarity and connection. Mirroring tactics include matching body language, including posture, gestures, and movement, creating physical synchrony. Copying speech patterns, including pace, tone, and vocabulary, making communication feel natural. Adopting similar attitudes and opinions on various topics, creating ideological alignment. Mirroring energy levels and emotional states, creating emotional synchrony, and reflecting back target's own words and phrases, making them feel heard and understood. Mirroring works through chameleon effect, where unconscious mimicry creates liking, because humans are drawn to those similar to themselves, making mirroring create instant rapport without conscious awareness that connection is being manufactured through deliberate copying. Research shows even subtle mirroring like matching foot position or drink choice increases liking and compliance, demonstrating power of similarity even when trivial. The similarity emphasis finds and highlights commonalities, creating perception of shared identity. Similarity tactics include discovering shared background, including hometown, school, or workplace, identifying common interests, hobbies, or preferences, emphasizing shared demographics like age, gender, or ethnicity, finding mutual acquaintances or connections, highlighting similar experiences or challenges faced, and creating as versus them dynamic against common outgroup. Similarity works because people trust those like themselves more than different others through in-group favoritism, where shared identity creates automatic positive bias and increased willingness to help or comply, making similarity finding primary rapport-building tool. Manipulators actively search for any possible similarity, however minor, to emphasize because even trivial commonality creates connection. The compliments and flattery give genuine seeming praise, increasing target's positive feelings toward flatterer. Flattery tactics include complimenting appearance, abilities, or achievements, praising target's judgment or decisions, validating their choices, admiring possessions or lifestyle elements, highlighting target's positive qualities or strengths, and using subtle flattery that seems observational, not obvious. Flattery works even when transparent because humans enjoy hearing positive things about themselves, making praise effective, even when recipient knows it might be manipulative, demonstrating that cognitive awareness of flattery does not eliminate its emotional impact. Strategic flatterers compliment specifically and believably rather than using generic excessive praise that triggers suspicion. The name usage and personal interest shows attention and care. Personal interest tactics include using target's name frequently throughout conversation, remembering and referencing previously shared personal information, asking questions about target's life showing curiosity, actively listening and responding to what target says, and following up on previous conversations demonstrating memory and care. Name usage and interest work because they signal that you see target as individual, not interchangeable person, making them feel valued and creating reciprocal positive feelings toward you, making personal attention powerful rapport builder that costs nothing but creates significant likability increase. The shared experience creation builds false intimacy through manufactured common moments. Experience tactics include suggesting activities or meetings, creating time together, sharing food or drinks because eating together creates bonding, creating inside jokes or references, building exclusive shared culture, going through challenging or emotional experiences together, creating bond, and establishing routines or traditions, making relationship feel established and deep. Shared experiences work because they create history and familiarity, making relationship feel older and closer than it actually is, accelerating intimacy development beyond natural pace, making manufactured closeness seem authentic. The vulnerability and disclosure, sharing personal information, encouraging reciprocal disclosure. Disclosure tactics include revealing seemingly personal information, creating sense of trust and openness, asking personal questions, encouraging target to share, matching disclosure level with slightly deeper sharing, encouraging escalation, and using disclosure to create sense of special connection, suggesting you do not share this with everyone. Strategic disclosure works because vulnerability creates trust, where sharing personal information signals you trust target, encouraging reciprocal trust, and deeper sharing creating intimacy spiral, where each disclosure encourages next, making relationship feel closer through manufactured mutual vulnerability. The favor asking and giving creates reciprocity while building relationship. Favor tactics include asking small favors, making target invest in relationship through helping, doing favors for target, creating obligation and demonstrating care, and using Benjamin Franklin effect, where doing favor for someone actually increases their liking if you counterintuitively, because people justify effort by assuming they must like person they helped. Favors work by directionally creating both obligation and liking, making them dual-purpose rapport and compliance tools. The association with positivity connects yourself to positive experiences and feelings. Association tactics include being present during target's positive moments, creating or facilitating positive experiences, bringing good news or benefits, and avoiding being associated with negative news or experiences. Association works through classical conditioning, where being repeatedly paired with positive feelings creates automatic positive response to your presence, making you liked through association, not through inherent qualities. The awareness recognition identifies manufactured rapport. Recognition includes questioning whether relationship development pace feels natural or artificially accelerated, noticing when someone seems to share suspiciously many similarities or interests, being skeptical of flattery, especially when followed by requests, recognizing when disclosure seems strategic, not genuine, and maintaining boundaries even with likable people, especially when requests are made. Awareness that liking can be manufactured enables evaluating relationships and requests separately. The implementation requires mirroring and matching, creating unconscious similarity, emphasizing commonalities, building shared identity, giving strategic compliments, using names and showing interest, creating shared experiences, employing vulnerability strategically, exchanging favors, associating with positivity, and treating liking weaponization as manufacturing friendship for compliance, where artificial rapport creates trust, enabling requests that would be refused from disliked person making. Manufactured likability essential fifth dark persuasion framework, exploiting tendency to comply with friends, even when friendship is calculated manipulation, not genuine relationship. Liking and rapport weaponization uses friendship as manipulation tool. Make them like you get compliance. Recognize artificial rapport or trust fake friend. You understand now that humans comply more with people they like, that liking can be manufactured through mirroring and similarity, that flattery works even when transparent, that shared experiences accelerate intimacy, and that Chapter 5 provides liking framework making friendship weaponization possible, where unaware targets trust manufactured rapport. Chapter 6. Commitment and consistency traps. Getting small yes to create big yes. Chapter 6 creates commitment and consistency traps, getting small yes to create big yes by exploiting powerful human desire to appear and be consistent with previous commitment statements and actions. The consistency power shows that once people commit to position or action, they experience strong psychological pressure to behave consistently with that commitment, even when circumstances change or commitment was trivial, because inconsistency creates cognitive dissonance, causing psychological discomfort. That commitment and consistency principle is so powerful that people will rationalize, justify, and defend positions they committed to even when those positions are clearly wrong or harmful. Demonstrating consistency drive can override logic and self-interest. That manipulators exploit consistency by securing small initial commitments that seem harmless, then leveraging those commitments to obtain much larger commitments following same direction, making initial yes create pathway to bigger yes. That public commitments create stronger consistency pressure than private commitments because being seen as inconsistent threatens social reputation, making public commitments particularly binding. And understanding that systematically creating commitment traps through foot-in-door technique, public commitment, written commitment, and consistency framing is essential sixth arc persuasion framework because initial commitment creates psychological pathway, making subsequent larger commitments feel necessary to maintain consistency, where recognizing escalating commitment pattern enables saying no to exploitative requests despite previous small yes. Commitment and consistency traps get small yes, creating pressure for big yes. Start tiny, build large. Spot escalating commitments or get trapped in consistency. The foot-in-door technique starts with small, easily agreed requests, then follows with larger requests that would have been refused if asked initially. Foot-in-door tactics include beginning with trivial requests like answering single question or signing petition, following initial compliance with moderately larger request, progressively escalating requests building from small to large, and framing larger requests as natural continuation of initial commitment. Foot-in-door works because initial small compliance creates self-perception shift, where a person begins seeing themselves as someone who supports cause or helps requester, making subsequent refusal feel inconsistent with newly formed identity. Classic demonstration show people who agreed to place small sign in window later agreed to place large ugly sign in yard at rates far exceeding those who were asked for large sign, initially demonstrating that small yes creates pathway to big yes that would otherwise be refused. The public commitment creation makes commitments visible to others, multiplying consistency pressure through social accountability. Public tactics include getting verbal commitments made in presence of others, having people announce decisions or positions publicly, creating social media posts or public declarations, getting commitments made in group settings, and recording or documenting commitments, making them permanent and visible. Public commitment works because being seen as inconsistent threatens reputation and social standing, making public commitments far more binding than private commitments, where breaking public commitment risks being perceived as unreliable or dishonest, creating powerful motivation to follow through even when commitment becomes costly or undesirable. The written commitment uses active writing to increase psychological investment and commitment strength. Written tactics include having people write down goals, decisions, or commitments, getting signatures on agreements or pledges even for trivial matters, having people fill out forms or applications, creating investment, using contracts or formal documents, making commitment feel official, and keeping written records that can be referenced later. Written commitment works because writing requires active engagement and creates permanent record, making commitment feel more real and binding than verbal commitment, while also creating evidence that can be used to remind person of their commitment if they waver, making written commitments particularly effective for ensuring follow-through. The consistency framing presents new requests as consistent with previous positions or commitments. Consistency framing includes reminding person of previous statements or actions, then presenting new request as aligned. Asking, "Have you ever claimed X?" suggesting that declining current request contradicts that claim, pointing out that refusing would be inconsistent with their previous behavior or stated values. And using phrases like, "Since you believe X, you should also Y," creating logical chain. Consistency framing works because pointing out inconsistency creates pressure to align current action with previous positions, making request seem not new demand, but natural continuation of existing commitments, making refusal feel hypocritical. The identity labeling assigns positive identity label, then requests behavior consistent with label. Labeling tactics include calling person generous, helpful, or civic-minded before asking for favor, telling person they are above average or special, creating identity to live up to. Phrasing previous behavior, creating identity around their behavior. And using phrases like, "You seem like someone who values X," before requesting X consistent action. Identity labeling works because people want to act consistently with positive self-image, making behavior that matches applied label feel identity affirming, while refusal threatens positive label, making compliance way to prove label is accurate. The sunk cost exploitation reminds person of previous investment, creating pressure to continue. Sunk cost tactics include emphasizing time, money, or effort already invested, framing quitting as wasting previous investment, suggesting that stopping now means all prior effort was for nothing, and using phrases like, "You have come this far," creating momentum pressure. Sunk cost exploitation works because people irrationally try to justify past investments by continuing commitment, even when continuation is clearly unwise, demonstrating that previous investment creates commitment trap, where cutting losses feels like admitting waste, making continued investment seem necessary despite being additional waste. The lowball technique secures commitment with attractive offer, then reveals costs or changes conditions after commitment is made. Lowball tactics include offering deal or opportunity that seems highly attractive, waiting for commitment or initial action, then revealing additional costs, hidden fees, or less favorable terms, and relying on commitment and consistency to prevent backing out. Lowball works because initial commitment creates psychological investment, making people reluctant to reverse decision even when terms worsen, demonstrating commitment trumps rational cost-benefit analysis. The consistency questioning asks questions designed to elicit answers that create commitments. Question tactics include asking, "Do you consider yourself a helpful person?" before requesting help, asking about values or beliefs before requesting value-consistent action, getting agreement on general principles before applying to specific case, and using leading questions that produce desired commitments. Consistency questioning works because answering creates implicit commitment that subsequent request references. The awareness recognition identifies commitment escalation pattern. Recognition includes noticing when small initial requests are followed by increasingly larger requests, questioning whether previous trivial commitment should obligate significant future action, recognizing when consistency pressure is being leveraged, and giving yourself permission to change mind or say no despite previous yes. Awareness that small commitment creates pathway to large exploitation enables breaking consistency trap. The implementation requires using foot in door, starting small, building large, creating public commitments, multiplying pressure, getting written commitments, increasing binding, framing requests as consistency, maintaining, applying identity labels, exploiting sunk costs, employing lowball technique, asking consistency questions, and treating commitment traps as exploiting consistency drive, where small yes creates psychological pathway to big yes, making initial commitment essential. 6. Dark Persuasion framework that bypasses rational evaluation through leveraging powerful need for consistency, turning trivial agreement into binding obligation. Commitment and consistency traps get small yes, creating pressure for big yes. Start tiny, build large. Spot escalating commitments or get trapped in consistency. You understand now that humans need to appear consistent, that small commitments create pressure for large ones, that public and written commitments are most binding, that identity labels create behavior pressure, and that Chapter 6 provides commitment framework making consistency exploitation possible where unaware targets feel obligated to comply with large requests because of previous trivial agreement. Chapter 7. Framing and perspective control. Defining reality and acceptable options. Chapter 7 controls framing and perspective, defining reality and acceptable options by manipulating how choices and information are presented, determining perception and decision independent of objective facts. The framing power shows that behavioral economics research demonstrates same objective information presented differently creates dramatically different decisions, proving that framing, not facts, determines choices. That framing works because humans do not evaluate options objectively, but rather relative to reference points, comparison anchors, and contextual presentation, making how choice is framed more important than what choice actually is. That manipulators control framing through choosing positive versus negative presentation, selecting comparison standards, limiting perceived options, and using emotionally loaded language, shaping interpretation before rational evaluation occurs. That once frame is established, it becomes lens through which all subsequent information is filtered, making initial framing disproportionately powerful in determining final decisions. And understanding that systematically controlling framing through gain-loss presentation, anchor setting, option limitation, and language selection is essential. Seventh, dark persuasion framework, because framing defines reality, making manipulator who controls frame control perception and decision, where recognizing framing manipulation enables reframing to see options and information differently. Framing and perspective control defines reality, shaping perception and choice. Control the frame, control decision. Recognize framing or accept manipulated reality. The gain versus loss framing presents identical option as gain or loss, creating different decisions, despite same objective outcome. Gain-loss framing includes presenting choice as keeping something or gaining benefit, versus presenting same choice as losing something or avoiding cost. Framing medical treatment as 90% survival rate versus 10% mortality rate, where same statistics create different decisions. Describing product as 95% fat-free versus 5% fat, and using positive action-oriented language versus negative avoidance language. Gain-loss framing works because humans are loss-averse, feeling losses more intensely than equivalent gains, making loss-framed presentation more motivating for risk-averse choices, while gain-framed presentation encourages risk-seeking, demonstrating that framing, not facts, determines risk tolerance and decision-making. Framing essential control tool. The comparison anchor setting establishes reference point, making target options seem reasonable, favorable, or necessary. Anchor tactics include presenting expensive option first, making subsequent options seem reasonable by comparison, showing worst-case scenario, making current options seem acceptable, comparing to irrelevant or extreme alternatives, stacking comparison in favor of desired choice, using decoy options that are clearly inferior, making target option seem superior, and controlling what gets compared, determining whether option seems good or bad based solely on comparison standards. Anchor setting works because people evaluate relatively, not absolutely, making first anchor or chosen comparison determine perception of value, quality, or desirability regardless of objective merit, making comparison control powerful framing tool. The option limitation restricts perceived choices, creating false dichotomy. Limitation tactics include presenting only two options when more exist, forcing binary choice, framing choice as accept my proposal or suffer bad outcome, hiding alternative solutions, using either or language, eliminating middle ground, controlling what options are considered legitimate versus dismissed as unrealistic, and omitting options that would be preferable if considered. Option limitation works because people choose from options presented, not from all possible options, making manipulator who controls menu control decision by excluding alternatives that would be chosen if known, making option presentation determine outcome. The loaded language and emotional words shape interpretation and emotional response. Language tactics include using emotionally charged words, creating desired feelings about options, labeling options with positive or negative descriptors, using metaphors and analogies that frame situation in desired way, employing euphemisms to minimize negative aspects or harsh language to maximize them, and selecting specific words that trigger associations or assumptions. Loaded language works because words carry emotional and associative baggage beyond literal meaning, making language choice shape perception, where calling something investment versus cost or freedom fighter versus terrorist changes evaluation of identical actions demonstrating language determines reality. The sequential presentation orders information strategically using primacy and recency effects. Presentation tactics include putting desired option first, capturing primacy effect, where first information shapes interpretation of subsequent information. Putting desired option last, leveraging recency effect, where last information is most memorable. Burying unfavorable information in middle where attention is lowest. And controlling pace or timing of information release, managing what is salient when. Sequential control works because information encountered first establishes frame for interpreting later information, and last information is most available in memory when making decision-making order, not just content, determine impact. The context manipulation changes surrounding information, altering how target information is perceived. Context tactics include surrounding desired option with inferior alternatives, making it seem superior. Placing information next to carefully selected context-changing interpretation, using environmental cues or settings that prime certain associations, and controlling background information that shapes understanding of foreground information. Context manipulation works because perception is relative to surrounding context, making identical information seem different based solely on what it is placed next to or presented within, demonstrating that context is content. The reframing technique turns objections or negative aspects into reasons for compliance. Reframing tactics include acknowledging objection, then reinterpreting as actual benefit, using yes and instead of yes, that to acknowledge, then redirect, finding positive spin for negative aspects, and using reversal where apparent weakness becomes strength. Reframing objections works because it maintains frame control, preventing alternative interpretation from taking hold, making even resistance become support. The preemptive framing establishes interpretation before contrary information appears. Preemptive tactics include setting expectations about what information means before presenting it, warning about misleading counter-arguments before they are encountered, inoculating against them, establishing criteria for evaluation that favor desired conclusion, and defining terms or concepts in self-serving ways. Preemptive framing works because first interpretation sticks, making later contrary information be evaluated through established frame rather than changing frame. The awareness recognition identifies framing manipulation. Recognition includes questioning how choice is being presented, considering what options are not mentioned, reframing to see situation differently, checking whether language is emotionally loaded or neutral, and seeking alternative comparison standards or reference points. Awareness that framing is choice, not objective reality, enables rejecting manipulators' frame and choosing own perspective. The implementation requires using gain-loss framing, exploiting loss aversion, setting comparison anchors, controlling reference points, limiting options, creating false dichotomy, employing loaded language, shaping emotion, ordering presentation strategically, manipulating context, reframing objections, preemptively establishing interpretation, and treating framing control as defining reality, where controlling how information is presented controls how it is perceived, making framing essential. Seventh, dark persuasion framework that determines decisions through presentation manipulation independent of objective facts, making frame control reality control. Framing and perspective control defines reality, shaping perception and choice. Control the frame, control decision. Recognize framing or accept manipulated reality. You understand now that framing, not facts, determines decisions. That same information framed differently creates different choices. That comparison anchors and option limitation control perception. That language and context shape interpretation. And that Chapter 7 provides framing framework, making reality definition possible, where unaware targets accept manipulators' frame as objective reality. Chapter 8. Emotional state manipulation, using mood as influence weapon. Chapter 8 manipulates emotional state using mood as influence weapon by deliberately triggering specific emotions that impair judgment and increase compliance. The emotion power shows that neuroscience research demonstrates emotions strongly influence and often override rational decision-making, where emotional arousal reduces analytical thinking and increases reliance on mental shortcuts, making emotional people more susceptible to persuasion. That different emotions create different vulnerabilities, where fear increases desire for security and acceptance of authority. Anger impairs careful thinking and increases aggression. Guilt creates desire to make amends through compliance, and positive emotions increase trust and reduce skepticism. that manipulators strategically induce target emotional states, knowing those states increase specific types of compliance, making emotion manipulation not random, but calculated to match desired outcome. That emotional manipulation is particularly insidious, because targets attribute their feelings to situation, not recognizing emotions were deliberately induced, making them trust emotional responses as genuine reactions, not manufactured states. And understanding that systematically manipulating emotions through fear induction, guilt creation, anger triggering, and positive emotion generation is essential to the persuasion framework, because emotional state determines decision quality and compliance probability, where recognizing emotional manipulation enables separating feelings from facts, making rational decisions despite induced emotional state. Emotional state manipulation uses mood as influence weapon, triggering compliance. Control emotion, control decision. Spot emotional manipulation or decide from triggered state. The fear and anxiety induction creates desire for security and acceptance of solutions. Fear tactics include highlighting threats, dangers, or risks, whether real, exaggerated, or fabricated. Emphasizing vulnerability and lack of control. Using alarming statistics or worst-case scenarios. Creating sense of urgency around threat. Presenting dire consequences of inaction, and offering solution that promises security or threat elimination. Fear induction works because anxiety increases desire for certainty and security, making people accept authority and proposed solutions. They would normally question, seeking relief from uncomfortable fear state, making fear powerful compliance tool. Manipulators understand that moderate fear is most effective, where too little creates no motivation or too much creates paralysis, making optimal fear level 1 that creates discomfort without overwhelming. The guilt and shame creation produces desire to make amends through compliance. Guilt tactics include highlighting how person's actions or inactions have hurt others, emphasizing hypocrisy between stated values and actual behavior, making person feel they have violated moral obligation, pointing out unfairness where others sacrifice while they do not, and using social comparison, showing how person falls short of peers. Guilt works because it creates psychological discomfort that can be relieved through compliance with requests that demonstrates atonement or value alignment, making guilt powerful motivator, especially when combined with clear action that would eliminate guilt, making compliance seem like moral imperative, not optional choice. The anger and frustration triggering impairs rational thinking and increases aggression. Anger tactics include emphasizing injustices or unfair treatment, identifying enemies or outgroups to blame, highlighting obstacles or barriers creating frustration, using inflammatory language triggering emotional reaction, and validating anger while directing it toward target. Anger manipulation works because emotional arousal impairs prefrontal cortex function, reducing careful analysis, while increasing impulsive action, making angry people more likely to act without thinking, accepting aggressive solutions, or joining movements that promise to address source of anger, making anger useful for mobilization, and reducing critical evaluation. The hope and optimism generation creates openness to unrealistic promises. Hope tactics include presenting idealized future outcomes, emphasizing possibility and potential, using inspirational language and stories, downplaying obstacles or challenges, creating belief that change is possible, and offering vision that seems achievable with compliance. Hope manipulation works because positive emotions increase trust and reduce skepticism, making people overlook risks or unrealistic elements, accepting promises they would normally question, wanting to believe positive outcome is possible, making hope powerful for selling dreams or securing commitment to difficult endeavors. The excitement and arousal reduction of critical evaluation. Excitement tactics include creating sense of opportunity or adventure, using high energy and enthusiasm, emphasizing novel or unique aspects, generating buzz or hype, creating competitive dynamics, and using time pressure combined with positive emotion. Excitement works because arousal reduces careful thinking, increasing impulsive decisions, making excited people less likely to notice problems or evaluate critically, accepting offers based on feeling, not analysis. The existing state leverage times requests to match emotional vulnerability. Timing tactics include making requests when person is already stressed, anxious, or emotionally compromised, approaching during or after emotional events, exploiting grief, sadness, or other vulnerable states, and capitalizing on positive emotions like gratitude or celebration. State leverage works because existing emotions create windows of heightened susceptibility, making timing of request as important as content. The emotion reinforcement validates and intensifies target emotional state. Reinforcement tactics include agreeing with and validating emotional response, sharing similar emotional reactions, using emotional language matching target state, and avoiding rational discussion that might reduce emotional intensity. Reinforcement works because it prevents emotional regulation, keeping target in manipulable emotional state longer. The contrast manipulation creates emotional roller coaster. Contrast tactics include inducing negative emotion, then offering relief, creating gratitude, following fear with hope, creating receptiveness to solution, or using emotional peaks and valleys to maintain engagement and reduce rational analysis. Contrast works because emotional shifts are compelling and distracting, making people focus on feelings, not facts. The awareness recognition identifies emotional manipulation. Recognition includes noticing when emotions arise suddenly or seem disproportionate, questioning whether you are being deliberately emotionally triggered, separating feelings from facts, taking time before deciding when emotional, and recognizing common emotional manipulation patterns. Awareness enables emotional regulation, resisting manipulation. The implementation requires inducing fear, creating desire for security, generating guilt, producing atonement, compliance, triggering anger, impairing analysis, generating hope, increasing trust, creating excitement, reducing evaluation, leveraging existing emotional states, reinforcing emotions, preventing regulation, using emotional contrast, and treating emotional manipulation as controlling decision through mood, where induced emotions impaired judgment, making emotion control essential. 8th Dark Persuasion framework exploiting fact that emotional state determines decision quality, making deliberate emotion triggering powerful compliance tool. Emotional state manipulation uses mood as influence weapon, triggering compliance. Control emotion, control decision. Spot emotional manipulation or decide from triggered state. You understand now that emotions impair rational thinking, that different emotions create different vulnerabilities, that manipulators deliberately induce target emotional states, that timing requests to emotional states increases compliance, and that Chapter 8 provides emotion framework, making mood manipulation possible where unaware targets make decisions based on induced feelings, not facts. Chapter 9 Information Control and Selective Disclosure, managing what you know. Chapter 9 controls information and practices selective disclosure, managing what target knows by revealing supporting facts while concealing contradicting information, determining perception and decision through knowledge manipulation. The information power shows that people can only make decisions based on information they have access to, making information control powerful decision control tool, where withholding key facts can completely change decision, while target believes they have complete information. That selective disclosure is particularly effective manipulation because it appears transparent and honest, where manipulator shares information, creating illusion of full disclosure while carefully curating what gets shared, making deception invisible. That information asymmetry, where one party knows more than other, creates dependence and vulnerability, making less informed party reliant on more informed parties' interpretation and recommendations. That information overload overwhelms analytical capacity, making people unable to evaluate properly, defaulting to trusting information source rather than analyzing information itself, and understanding that systematically controlling information through selective disclosure. Complexity creation, timing manipulation, and overload generation is essential. 9th Dark Persuasion framework because controlling what someone knows controls what they decide, where recognizing information manipulation enables demanding complete disclosure and independent verification, making informed decisions instead of deciding from partial curated information. Information control and selective disclosure manages what you know, shaping decision. Control information, control conclusion. Demand complete information or decide from partial truth. The negative information withholding conceals downsides, risks, or costs. Withholding tactics include omitting negative aspects or potential problems, hiding risks or side effects, concealing costs or hidden fees revealed only after commitment, failing to mention failures or negative outcomes, suppressing contradicting evidence or data, and avoiding disclosure of conflicts of interest or motivations. Withholding works because people assume absence of negative information means no negative aspects exist, making silence seem like confirmation of quality, when actually it represents concealment, making what is not said as important as what is said but invisible without specific questioning or independent investigation. The benefit emphasis and cost minimization skews presentation toward positive while downplaying negative. Emphasis tactics include highlighting benefits extensively while mentioning costs briefly, using detailed positive descriptions but vague negative acknowledgments, spending time on advantages but rushing through disadvantages, using enthusiastic language for benefits but neutral or dismissive language for costs, and structuring presentation to make benefits salient and memorable while burying costs. Emphasis manipulation works because attention and detail signal importance, making extensively discussed benefits seem significant while briefly mentioned costs seem trivial, even when objective importance might be reversed, making presentation emphasis control perceived importance independent of actual significance. The technical jargon and complexity creation makes information incomprehensible, forcing dependence on manipulators' interpretation. Complexity tactics include using specialized terminology that target does not understand, presenting information in complicated formats requiring expertise to interpret, overwhelming with technical details that obscure key points, making simple matters seem complex requiring expert guidance, and creating appearance of sophisticated analysis that target cannot evaluate. Complexity works because it creates information asymmetry where target must trust experts' interpretation lacking knowledge to independently verify, making complex presentation tool for maintaining control while appearing thorough and expert, making incomprehensible information functionally same as withheld information. The timing control reveals information strategically to maximize impact or minimize scrutiny. Timing tactics include dumping negative information when target is distracted or has limited time to evaluate, revealing critical information immediately before deadline, preventing adequate evaluation, sequencing information to prime certain interpretations before contrary information appears, controlling pace of information release, managing what is salient when, and burying negative information in larger positive announcements. Timing manipulation works because when information is received affects how much attention it gets and how it is interpreted, making timing control content control through managing attention and context. The curated evidence presentation shows carefully selected supporting information appearing comprehensive while actually selective. Curation tactics include presenting only studies or data supporting claim while ignoring contradicting research, cherry-picking examples or testimonials that support position, showing successes while hiding failures, using unrepresentative samples claiming they are typical, and presenting correlation as causation or anecdotes as evidence. Curated evidence works because it appears evidence-based and thorough, making target believe they are seeing complete picture when actually seeing carefully filtered subset designed to support predetermined conclusion, making selective evidence invisible and less actively searching for contradicting information. The information overload overwhelms analytical capacity through excessive volume. Overload tactics include providing massive amounts of information beyond reasonable processing capacity, including unnecessary details and tangential information obscuring key points, using complex, dense presentations requiring significant effort to understand, providing information in formats that are difficult to evaluate like lengthy documents or complex spreadsheets, and creating urgency requiring decision before information can be properly evaluated. Overload works because cognitive capacity is limited, making excessive information create shutdown, where people stop analyzing and start trusting source rather than evaluating content, making more information sometimes mean less understanding and greater manipulation vulnerability. The source credibility control determines what information seems trustworthy. Source tactics include positioning favorable information as coming from credible experts while dismissing contradicting information as biased or unreliable, using credentials and authority to make information seem valid, creating appearance of independence when actually source is controlled or biased, and using multiple sources that appear independent but actually share same origin or bias. Source control works because people evaluate information partly based on perceived source credibility, making source manipulation powerful tool for determining what information gets believed versus dismissed. The question deflection avoids providing information that would hurt position. Deflection tactics include answering different question than one asked, claiming information is proprietary, confidential, or unavailable, responding with question rather than answer, dismissing question as irrelevant or uninformed, and providing non-answer that sounds responsive but does not actually address question. Deflection works because it appears responsive, while actually avoiding disclosure, making targets feel question was addressed when actually it was dodged. The awareness recognition identifies information manipulation. Recognition includes questioning what information is missing or not addressed, seeking independent sources and verification, asking specific questions requiring concrete answers, being skeptical when information seems one-sided, noticing when complexity or volume seems designed to confuse rather than inform, and demanding complete disclosure before decisions. Awareness that information can be controlled enables actively seeking complete picture. The implementation requires withholding negative information, concealing downsides, emphasizing benefits while minimizing costs, using jargon creating complexity dependence, controlling timing strategically, curating evidence appearing comprehensive while selective, generating overwhelming capacity, controlling source credibility, deflecting questions, avoiding disclosure, and treating information control as determining decisions through knowledge manipulation, where controlling what target knows controls what they conclude, making selective disclosure essential. Ninth, dark persuasion framework, exploiting information asymmetry, where less informed party is vulnerable to more informed parties, curated partial truth presented as complete information. Information control and selective disclosure manages what you know, shaping decision. Control information, control conclusion. Demand complete information or decide from partial truth. You understand now that decisions require complete information which can be controlled, that selective disclosure appears transparent while being deceptive, that complexity and overload prevent evaluation, that timing and emphasis control attention, and that Chapter 9 provides information framework, making knowledge manipulation possible, where unaware targets decide from incomplete curated information, believing they have full picture. Chapter 10. Integrate all tactics into dark influence symphony. Chapter 10 integrates all tactics into dark influence symphony, combining all 9 dark persuasion frameworks simultaneously, creating overwhelming multi-layered influence, where targets never identify a single manipulation, because multiple tactics work together seamlessly, creating psychological control that feels natural, inevitable, and irresistible. The integration principle shows that individual tactics practiced in isolation create partial influence, while comprehensive integration creates complete control, that master manipulators never use single tactic, but layer multiple approaches, creating redundancy, where if one tactic fails, others still work, making integrated approach far more effective than any single method. That integration creates synergy, where tactics amplify each other with reciprocity, making authority more effective authority, making scarcity more believable, and emotional manipulation, making information control more powerful, creating multiplication, not mere addition of effects. That seamless integration is invisible because attention focused on surface interaction misses underlying tactical structure, making manipulation undetectable until analyzing specifically for tactical patterns. And understanding that integrating all 9 frameworks into coordinated influence system is essential. 10th and final dark persuasion framework, because only comprehensive tactical integration creates overwhelming irresistible influence, where partial tactical application remains vulnerable to resistance, making complete integration ultimate manipulation mastery. Integrate all tactics into dark influence symphony, creating overwhelming control. Layer tactics multiply power. Recognize integrated manipulation or surrender to psychological control. The tactical layering combines multiple frameworks simultaneously, creating reinforcing persuasion architecture. Layering examples include using reciprocity, creating obligation, then leveraging authority positioning, making obligation seem legitimate and compliance necessary, not optional. Combining social proof, showing everyone does it, with scarcity, suggesting opportunity is limited, creating both validation and urgency. Using liking and rapport to establish relationship, then deploying commitment traps, where friendship makes initial small yes feel safe, while consistency pressure creates escalating. Compliance, employing framing to define reality and options while manipulating emotional state, ensuring frame is accepted through emotional arousal, preventing rational frame questioning, and controlling information while using all other tactics, ensuring target lacks knowledge to resist while multiple influence vectors push toward compliance. Layered tactics work because each addresses different psychological vulnerability, creating multi-point attack where resisting one tactic does not prevent influence because 6 others remain active, making integrated manipulation overwhelmingly effective. The tactical sequencing orders frameworks strategically, building influence progressively. Sequencing typically begins with liking and rapport, establishing relationship and lowering defenses, follows with social proof and authority, providing validation and credibility for what comes next, introduces reciprocity through strategic giving, creating obligation foundation, employs framing and information control, defining reality and limiting knowledge, triggers appropriate emotional state, preparing for request, creates scarcity and urgency, forcing immediate decision, uses commitment techniques, securing initial agreement, and maintains consistency, pressure, ensuring follow-through. Sequential deployment works because each phase prepares target for next, making influence cumulative, where early tactics create conditions for later tactics to succeed, making order matter as much as tactics themselves. The redundancy creation ensures influence succeeds even if individual tactics fail. Redundancy means never relying on single approach, but always having backup tactics addressing same goal through different mechanisms, making resistance to one tactic irrelevant because 5 others achieve same outcome. Redundancy works because it makes influence robust and failure resistant, where skilled manipulator has answer for every objection, alternative for every resistance, making escape from influence impossible without recognizing and resisting entire tactical framework, not just individual elements. The synergistic multiplication recognizes tactics amplify each other exponentially. Synergy examples include authority, making reciprocity feel more binding where gift from authority figure creates stronger obligation than same gift from peer. Scarcity, making social proof more powerful, where limited availability of popular item creates competitive urgency. Emotional manipulation, making framing more effective where triggered emotions prevent rational frame questioning. And commitment, making information control easier where prior agreement creates bias toward accepting information supporting that agreement. Synergy means integrated effect exceeds sum of parts, making 10 tactics together produce influence far beyond 10 times influence of single tactic. The invisibility through complexity makes individual tactics undetectable. Complexity concealment works because attention focused on surface conversation or interaction does not perceive underlying tactical structure, where casual observer sees friendly conversation, not recognition that every statement serves tactical purpose. Natural seeming flow, not recognition that sequence is carefully designed, and helpful information, not recognition that information is curated and controlled. Invisibility makes manipulation undetectable without specifically analyzing for tactical frameworks, making integrated influence feel natural, not constructed. The resistance preemption anticipates and neutralizes objections before they form. Preemption includes using framing to define what constitutes reasonable objection versus unreasonable resistance, employing emotional manipulation, creating states where objection feels inappropriate, like anger making opposition seem enemy sympathizing, or guilt making resistance feel selfish, leveraging commitment and consistency where previous agreement makes objection seem hypocritical, and controlling information, ensuring target lacks knowledge needed to form valid objections. Preemption works because it prevents resistance from emerging, not just overcomes resistance after it appears, making prevention more effective than overcoming. The escape elimination removes alternatives to compliance. Elimination tactics include using scarcity and urgency, removing option to delay, framing creating false dichotomy where only options are compliance or clearly unacceptable alternative, employing social proof suggesting everyone complies, making resistance seem deviant, and leveraging relationship where liking makes refusal feel like betraying friend. Escape elimination works because it makes compliance feel inevitable, not optional, making resistance seem futile or costly. The naturalization makes manipulation feel authentic. Naturalization includes using rapport, making tactical interaction feel like genuine relationship, employing framing, making manipulators' reality seem objective truth, triggering emotions, making manufactured feelings seem spontaneous, authentic responses, and creating commitment gradually, making escalation feel natural progression, not exploitation. Naturalization works because it prevents recognition that interaction is tactical, making target attribute influence to own choices and feelings, not external manipulation. The awareness recognition identifies integrated manipulation. Recognition includes stepping back to observe overall pattern, not just individual elements, noticing when interaction feels compelling but reasons unclear, recognizing tactical framework signatures like escalating commitment or curated information, questioning why you feel obligated, attracted, or convinced, and analyzing whether decision comes from genuine evaluation or tactical influence. Awareness that influence can be carefully orchestrated enables seeing manipulation that feels natural. The implementation requires layering multiple tactics simultaneously, creating reinforcement, sequencing frameworks strategically, building influence progressively, creating redundancy, ensuring success despite resistance, leveraging synergies, multiplying effects, maintaining invisibility through natural appearance, preempting resistance before it forms, eliminating escape options, naturalizing manipulation, making it feel authentic, and treating tactical integration as creating overwhelming, irresistible influence where comprehensive framework application produces compliance that partial tactical use cannot achieve, making integration ultimate dark persuasion mastery, transforming individual tactics into coordinated symphony of psychological control. You have learned 10 dark persuasion tactics master manipulators use once they have read you. You understand reciprocity, exploitation, and how small gifts create large obligations. You recognize social proof manipulation and manufactured consensus. You see authority positioning and instant credibility tricks. You identify scarcity creation and artificial urgency. You catch liking, weaponization, and false friendship. You spot commitment traps and escalating yes. You recognize framing control, defining your reality. You see emotional manipulation using mood as weapon. You identify information control and selective disclosure. You understand integration and how tactics combine into overwhelming influence symphony. You can now see the manipulation. You see how they read you in part 1, discovering your fears, desires, and vulnerabilities. You see how they influence you in part 2, using 10 dark persuasion tactics, exploiting what they learned about you. But seeing is not enough. Because even though you now understand these tactics, even though you recognize the patterns, even though you can identify manipulation when you analyze carefully, you are still vulnerable. Why? Because knowledge alone does not create immunity. Understanding manipulation intellectually does not automatically protect you when skilled manipulator deploys integrated tactics in real time with social pressure, emotional triggers, and relationship dynamics overwhelming your analytical capacity. You can recognize reciprocity when studying it calmly. But when someone you like gives you unexpected gift, then immediately asks favor while others are watching and deadline is approaching, can you resist obligation in that moment? Can you say no when guilt, shame, and social pressure converge? You understand commitment traps in theory, but when you already said yes to small requests and refusing bigger requests makes you look inconsistent or seem like you are abandoning commitment when others are counting on you, can you break consistency pressure in real time? Awareness is necessary, but not sufficient. You need more than recognition. You need active defenses. You need specific counter tactics for each influence pattern that work automatically under pressure. You need psychological shields that deflect manipulation without requiring conscious analysis. You need decision-making frameworks that work when emotional, when rushed, when socially pressured. You need communication strategies that shut down influence attempts without confrontation or relationship damage. You need to know when to resist and when influence is ethical. Because not all influence is manipulation. Not all persuasion is exploitation. And you need to understand ethical application. Because these same tactics can be used ethically for positive influence. Leadership, teaching, parenting, sales, negotiation, conflict resolution all involve influence. The question is not whether to influence, but how to influence ethically versus manipulatively. Where is the line between persuasion and manipulation? When does influence become exploitation? How can you use these tools for good without becoming manipulator yourself? Part 3 answers all these questions. Part 3. How to become manipulation-proof, shield your mind, and ethically influence others. You will learn the 10 protection strategies that make you immune to dark persuasion. You will discover how to recognize tactics in real time under pressure and deploy specific counters automatically. You will understand boundaries between ethical influence and dark manipulation, knowing when you are being helped versus exploited. You will develop your own ethical influence capability using these tools for positive leadership, communication, and persuasion, not exploitation. The trilogy is incomplete without Part 3. Part 1 taught you to read people. Part 2 taught you influence tactics. Part 3 teaches you to protect yourself and apply ethically. Master manipulators already use all 3 parts. They read you discovering vulnerabilities. They influence you using dark tactics. and they protect themselves from your resistance, making their manipulation unbreakable. Right now, you are like warrior who studied enemy weapons, but has no armor, and no sword of your own. You know how you are being attacked, but cannot defend effectively and cannot fight back appropriately. You can recognize manipulation after the fact when analyzing calmly, but not during interaction when it matters. You see tactics used on others, but miss them when used on you because social pressure and emotional arousal overwhelm analysis. You need part 3 immediately, because incomplete knowledge is dangerous knowledge. You now know enough to make manipulators work harder, but not enough to actually stop them. You are more aware, but not more protected. You see manipulation afterward, but not during. You understand tactics, but cannot counter them. Watch part 3 now to complete your dark psychology mastery. The 10 protection strategies are waiting. The ethical application frameworks are ready. The complete system that makes you manipulation-proof while enabling you to influence positively and ethically is in part 3. Do not stop here. Your education is incomplete. Click to part 3 immediately. Finish the trilogy. Become truly manipulation-proof. Learn to influence ethically. Complete your dark psychology education. Part 3. How to become manipulation-proof. Watch it now. The protection you need is waiting. The ethical frameworks are ready. Your transformation from vulnerable target to protected ethical influencer happens in part 3. Click now. Complete the trilogy. Master dark psychology completely.